To our first company now, and it's Pulsar Helium, founded 4 years ago, listed on the TSXV in 2023, admitted to AIM last year. The company's business is to find the commodity they say we all rely on, which is helium. I'm delighted to be joined by the co-founder, president, and chief executive, Thomas Abraham James, who joins us now. A very warm welcome to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much for having me, Sarah. Hello, world, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in and hearing the Pulsar Helium story. So here we are, Pulsar Helium. I always like to start with this slide, so it really puts us into perspective what it's all about. And so this is actually from last year, where we drilled at our project, Helium project in Minnesota in the USA. And the Jetstream #1 well, and what we see here coming out of the wellhead is not water. What we see is gas, and we see helium-rich gas. And that was a big moment for the company, certainly that when we made that subsurface discovery, or reconfirming the original discovery from beforehand and getting extremely high concentration of helium. So it's really, we're the first mover in this project. We're not in a location which is being drilled excessively like many other gas fields have. We are the first mover there, and we've got off to an incredibly exciting start. Disclaimer that I encourage you all to read, and an overview. So yes, I just talked about our Topaz project, which is the one in Minnesota in the USA. And also we have a second project, which is the Tunu project in Greenland. That is also a primary helium project. But today, most of the emphasis will be on Topaz, because purely that is a more advanced project. So primary helium, what does that mean? Primary means that helium is the primary economic driver. At the moment, the majority of the world's helium is produced as a byproduct of hydrocarbon production, so natural gas. Not ideal, because that doesn't give a great deal of flexibility for helium production, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So news flow. So we've just recently completed drilling the Jetstream #2 well, which is next to the one that I showed in that first slide. And then we also deepened the first well also. And so now we have well cleanup and testing soon to commence. Myself and other senior members of the company, we're invested heavily into this. So we own about 38% of the issued share capital. And we're also quite happily signed up to quite a lengthy escrow arrangement as well. So certainly have firm belief in the long-term potential of this company, and indeed the commodity helium as well. And really the right jurisdictions. So the USA, it is the world's largest consumer of helium. And what we have seen is supply there dwindling. Helium is notoriously difficult to transport, so domestic security, domestic supply is imperative for something like helium, which really does like to leak and disappear into the atmosphere. And as for Greenland, it is one of very, very few helium occurrences in Europe as well, so where it is on the critical list for the European Union. So a corporate snapshot here. So we are listed in 3 different jurisdictions. So if you're in the UK, we're on AIM. If you're in Canada, we're on the TSXV. And if you're in the USA, we're on the OTCQB. So I've made this slide slightly UK-centric, given that the majority of the audience will be joining from the UK today. So earlier this week, share price of 28.5p. And so that gives us a basic market capitalization of just over £38 million. So the cash position here, we put in US dollars, which is what our accounts are in, and that's from our last financial reporting period with 3.8 million. And obviously we spent some of that money since we've deepened Jetstream 1 and drilled #2 also. Major shareholders. So our major shareholder #1 is AB Crescent out of the Netherlands. So a financial investor. And then it's our chairman, Neil, and then myself. And other founders have about 18%, and the public shareholding float is about 51% of the company's issued capital. So it is very tightly held. So myself, geologist background, I've been in the helium industry now for over a decade. Joined with me by my colleague Neil Herbert, financial background, and has been associated with many successful companies. Dan Bryan, our CFO, Doris Mayer, who's the Chief of Compliance, John Ferrier, who used to be the CEO of Gulf Keystone Petroleum, London listed, and oil production in the Middle East. and then Brice Lorraine, who represents our major shareholder. We've also got a strong technical team as well. We've got Brad Cage, our VP of Engineering. So he's in charge of the reservoir and really defining the work program that needs to be implemented in order to get this into production as quickly as possible and as methodically as possible as well. But rich experience there. Michael Sturdy, our operations manager. So he's been working with drill rigs for close to 2 decades now in numerous continents. And then we've got Nick Schofield, Professor Nick Schofield, who is an expert in igneous and petroleum geology. Now, this is key. Nick for us is, a very, very strong member of our team, and that's because our reservoir, where the helium is in Minnesota, it is an igneous reservoir, and that experience that he brings with oil and gas in igneous reservoirs is really crucial. So why bother with helium? Well, it's definitely not just about party balloons. So it's all about technology. So the major one is semiconductors. If you're going to fabricate a semiconductor, you need to have helium. The other ones that we hear about frequently in the news is now space launch. In order for the fuel tank to maintain pressure as the launch occurs, helium is used. MRI scanners for magnets to superconduct, you need helium. The long and short of this is that as we get more advanced technology, data centers, fusion reactors, how do we keep things cold that generate a lot of heat and consume a lot of electricity? This is where helium comes in. And what we're seeing is that every week there are new articles about new applications for helium. So we certainly see demand staying. Looking at the US now specifically, so what we see here is that you've got the second chart, the one down the bottom here, is that we're seeing that there is USA exports of helium, so the USA being #1 producer. What we're seeing is the exports are dwindling, and what we're seeing is that the imports of helium into the USA are increasing. And so this is really reflecting the broader trend here that what we're seeing is that the USA does need to find additional sources of helium. And with the majority or the vast majority, so over 90% being a byproduct of natural gas, there's no flexibility in the system. And that's probably key, is that there is no flywheel. So there used to be the Federal Helium Reserve, which is the one where it was a storage of just helium. And so the world could say, okay, we want this much helium at any moment in time, and they would get it. That is not how it works at the moment. So at the moment, it is as a byproduct, it's like, okay, you can get your weekly or monthly delivery, but if you need more than that, the flexibility generally isn't there. And if you don't have a need for it, because it's a take or pay arrangement, chances are you'll be delivered it, paid for it, even if you don't need it. So what we're looking at with primary helium production is that how could we get this online and for it to become the flywheel in the system? And so really to bring stability to this very fragile supply chain for helium. And of course, with the scarcity of it, we've seen the price suitably reflected, which makes primary helium exploration viable, which over a decade ago it was not. And this is very much a new industry because of that increased demand and this increase in pricing. So zooming in on our Topaz project in Minnesota, we are in northern Minnesota, and we're not too far away from Lake Superior at the Great Lakes there. And we're just to the east of some of the major iron ore mines in North America. So you can see on the map here, I've got the North Shore Mine open cut pit. So resource extraction is not new to this location. What is new, though, is helium exploration. And quite frankly, it's new more or less everywhere. But with it, the government and the people of Minnesota have certainly been very welcoming. So much so that last year the state passed new legislation, new gas legislation that includes helium and certainly gives us the support that we need to be able to move this project forward. So extremely grateful for that. For helium production, the key consumable that you need is electricity, and there is electricity nearby, so there's power lines close to our project. And to be able to get the product out, it's road network. You're not looking at pipelines, you're looking at putting out on containers, so liquid helium containers. And so that road infrastructure is in place as well. So it really is a prime location and in the largest market. So world-class discovery. So here we have a list of North American states and provinces. And with what we drilled last year, we got up to 14.5% helium. To put that into context, and we can see here that out of all the wells drilled in other states and provinces, what we drilled in Minnesota is the highest. So the highest concentration seen. So helium is different, say, from natural gas. Natural gas, you get natural gas or no natural gas, whereas helium is all about concentration. So you could think of it a bit like hard rock mining or gold, grams per ton. For us, it's about percentage concentration. And so getting up to double-digit concentration has many, many benefits. So the biggest two are the overall gas in place, so the amount of gas that you need to find in the ground, which is a mixture, a blend of various gases, is less than, say, if it was 1% or 0.5% helium. So the overall amount of gas that you need to substantiate going to production is less. The other thing is you have a benefit when it comes to processing. So the higher the concentration, the less gas that needs to be processed, and should have a positive effect on your operational costs and your operational expenditure there as well. So what we have is we use the group sprawl to conduct a resource estimation based on that one well from last year. I have to emphasize on one well. And so we've got a P50, so prospective resource here of 0.4 billion cubic feet. So to put that in perspective, the world currently uses 6 billion cubic feet of helium per annum. But off to a great start with just one well drilled. And so then we have CO2 as well that we are looking to sell as a byproduct. And there is certainly significant demand. And then Sproul in their report, they put in here saying chance of commerciality. It's fairly high for an early stage project with a value of 0.65 out of 1. So 65% chance of commerciality with only one well drilled. So obviously, it's not just us that thinks that we're off to a good start. So here we are. So there are a few different helium companies out there. How do you compare apples with apples? It is difficult to do. There's different data that comes out. But one thing that is quite straightforward to give you an initial sort of feel for it is the potential production. And so flow rate. So last year, our flow rates that we calculated was 821,000 cubic feet per day, with a helium concentration in the range of 8.7 to 14.5. And taking that, its potential values of 71,000 to 119,000 cubic feet per day. And once again, off the one well. So one easy metric to look at. But now going on, this is what we drilled last year, which is the blue, and the red is what we drilled just the other month. So with jet stream number 1, we've now deepened it down significantly to go through the entirety of the interpreted reservoir. And nearby to it, we drilled jet stream number 2. And so the image that we're looking at here, this cross section, is a seismic velocity map. And basically, green is good. Green means that the velocity of the seismic waves is slower than, say, where it is red, where the speed is higher. And what we find is that correlates with where we're seeing gas in the wells. So this passive seismic technique that we've utilized, which has got effectively no footprint at surface, is very cost effective, cheap to deploy, and gather data quickly and real time, has really worked extremely well for us. And so we've drilled these 2 wells. They've gone down here, and they both recorded helium coming to surface during drilling. And so we're seeing multiple percent helium coming up. But whilst drilling, the gas that's encountered in the well is also mixed with the air that we breathe. And so they're always contaminated and diluted. But still, to see multi-percent level coming up is extremely encouraging and showing us that we're onto something potentially quite good. So what we have now is that we have the testing to come with these wells. So we have a cleanup that is soon to commence, and then we have the pressure testing and the flow testing to come. So for those of you aware, I've been reading our announcements. So that work is going to be conducted shortly, and we'll be providing a update to the market via a news release, giving exact dates when they're in hand, but not too much longer to wait. And then after that, we'll then be looking at a resource update and then looking at project economics. So for the first time in the public domain there, looking at, okay, what is the production potential of the Topaz project and how soon can we accomplish that? And on the subject of production, what we have done is we've signed an agreement with Chart Industries. And this is an agreement for engineering studies, design, feasibility and sensibility testing, and then ultimately fabrication of a facility to produce helium and CO2. So Chart is a company that will not have an interest in the gas itself. They would purely make us something which is fit for purpose for our project and then effectively sell it to us. But they really are a leading company for this. Most of the major gas and oil companies use Chart equipment. They're more or less the gold standard and work across with hydrogen, helium, natural gas, CO2, all the industrial gases. But also what's very pleasing is that to keep it in the state is that one of the largest fabrication facilities for Chart is in the state of Minnesota and only a couple of hour drive from our project. So we've got fast growing demand for helium. So the US helium reserves shrinking. Onshoring of manufacturing as well is particularly semiconductors, and of which already the state of Minnesota has multiple semiconductor fabrication facilities as well. It really does, and you know, with talk of tariffs out there, and it's a commodity that doesn't like to travel either. It does, after a while, leak through its containers. So really, to have something in the USA is crucial. So we firmly believe that we have the right project in the right jurisdiction, and more technical applications for it coming as well. So really, I think I've just gone over 15 minutes there, so I've rushed through it. What I'll do is I'll leave it on this slide here, which is our contact details. So you have here an email address. If you send an email to that, it'll come directly through to myself and my colleagues, but there's also multiple other channels to reach us on. I firmly encourage you, if you do have questions, to ask them now, or if we don't have time, please contact us via one of these methods. So, Sarah, over to you.
Many thanks. Lovely to see how shiny Chart's livery was on its vehicle there. I want to talk a bit more about this relationship with Chart, because Chart makes what you're extracting, producing fit for purpose, and then they sell it to you. And then who are you going to sell it on to? Are you going to sell it to the state of Minnesota if it doesn't travel well?
Well, actually, with Chart, it's just they're purely building facilities. So that would be something that Pulsar would ultimately be acquiring, paying for, and we would own it. So it would be our product going into our plant. It's just that Chart would be the manufacturer. But in terms of the ultimate, you know, who would be the ones that would be looking to purchase product? What we'd be looking at is certainly for the beginning would be some of the bulk users of helium. So this would be for fabrication of semiconductors, for MRI scanners, for space launch. There's some of the big obvious ones. There's also some independent distributors there as well, so who can take care of the small scale gaseous helium, so the cylinders that we may see at hospitals and so on. So to be able to sell to them as well. So there's multiple potential clients.
So I've just had a rather technical question come in, and I'm going to share this with everybody, and I'm probably going to have to speak very slowly. I need you to unpick this for me, please, Thomas. It says, what is the significance of the wellhead pressure readings released, and are the numbers of 122 PSIG, pounds per square inch gauge, and 151 indicative of a similar flow rate being achievable to the original Jetstream 1 rate of 820 MCF?
Well done, Sarah. That was a tricky one. But yes, MCF, so 1,000 cubic feet. So what we see is that, yeah, with the pressures, we're definitely encouraged by that. So it's in the range of what we drilled last year. And to have those pressures when we know that the wells require cleanup. So by cleanup, what I mean is that there's you know, drill fines down there, so effectively dust from the drilling where the rock was broken up, and it's that needs to be removed. So to see those pressures and actually how quickly those pressures build up is very encouraging. So it would be in the range of, therefore, the flow rate that we received last year. Well, we've gone down deeper. We've seen that beyond the reservoir that we drilled last year, we see that we've intersected other zones of helium, and we know that because we were getting the helium coming up to surface that we reported. So I am encouraged by it. Am I going to say if it's going to be better or worse? Let's see, but certainly everything that we've seen so far seems very encouraging.
So, a supplementary question from the same person who sent the very technical question. What is the expected flow rate you'd like to see achieved from each well, even as a broad range?
What would I like to see? Well, look, we achieved 821,000 last year. We've more or less doubled the well. So I would like to see, I think anything, if we could get over 1 million cubic feet, for a well, that would be a phenomenal achievement, considering the high concentration of helium there. I mean, already from what we can see is that before deepening, with the initial results that we got, it was Jetstream number one was one of the most prolific, if not top three helium wells ever drilled in history. So if we can, repeat and better that, I'll be extremely happy, I must admit. Not too much longer to wait.
And same question where concentration's concerned. What average concentration would you like to see again, even as a broad range?
Well, look, considering that other companies have gone into production with significantly less than what we've seen. So we've seen companies go into production or attempt to go into production with 0.5% helium, 1% helium, and that's their primary product, nothing else. So if we can get that 14.5% that we recorded, or even anything north of 5%, quite frankly, is phenomenal. Yeah, look, we know that we're in a high concentration helium system here. We know that it's not a hydrocarbon area. We know that there's no water down there. So really, the fundamentals of the geology in the well are excellent, and we don't, with the flow testing that we did last year, we weren't seeing any radical changes either in the helium concentration. So yeah.
So I want to talk to you about public administration in the US because externally, Trump and the rest of the world, he ping-pongs on his executive orders and his tariff mandates. But what's it like actually working in the US? Is public administration stable, or are you seeing sort of various in-country tariffs that might impact you, changing from one week or one month to the next?
No, for us, to be honest, there has been no impact on us. So, if anything, the support has only increased. So, being in Minnesota now for a number of years, it's been incredibly welcoming, supportive, local industry and government level as well. So, at the state and the federal level. So, we've had all forms of politicians come to site in every walk of life and local stakeholders as well. So we've really worked hard on that relationship and, very happy with how that's progressed. In terms of the fundamentals of the project itself, so we use local workforce. So we're not importing anything from abroad, be it equipment or personnel. So we're very much US centric. And then, otherwise, it's we own the land where we are, so the surface rights are actually owned by Pulsar. So it's we're not operating on federal or state land. So that gives us, certainty to move forward as well. And now with the new legislation from the state of Minnesota that only came out last year, and the opening up soon of the state lands for helium exploration and development, I must admit our experience has been continually good in the US.
And in terms of that land that you own, do you own that land in perpetuity?
We do, yes. We can put a nice log cabin on there one day.
Very, very good. Right, some macro questions for you. What are the current market conditions for helium across the defense industries since war seems to be dominating the headlines on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate application, isn't it? Yeah, look, with it, as with defense, a lot of it is very hush hush. We don't hear many of the details of it. But what we do become aware of is that certainly with drones, drone applications, that there's a helium use there. So they seem to be using that for testing, quite a lot of helium. But now, as I guess warfare becomes more high tech, it's less about jet engines. It's more about computing power and satellites. And really, that's where the semiconductors come in. So that's the big one. So leak testing for things, including batteries, lithium batteries, and so on. But the big one is computer chips. And so security for defense, I can only imagine that the US would want to shore that up even further than they perhaps already have.
So finally, Thomas, if there's peace on Earth, it's not just the defense industry, but the robotics boom that is relying on helium as well. And of course, robotics increasingly used in medicine and surgical procedures.
Yeah, look, the big application is healthcare, and so that's a really nice one to be associated with. So, MRI scanners, I've had an MRI, and I'm very grateful that technology exists. And so that's a huge consumer of helium for breathing gases as well. That uses a lot. And then for in terms of robots, and so we can all be lazy and live our lives on the sofa at the beach. I mean, it seems to be coming, doesn't it? But with AI and the computing power there, once again, it comes back to semiconductors and the computer chips. So we don't see any real let up in demand there. So for everything that we can think of, from deliveries to new forms of transportation to space to satellites to computers. Computer I'm talking to you on now, everything. As you said at the very beginning, it's the commodity we never knew that we relied upon.
Many thanks. What a lovely way to end. Thomas Abraham James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.